Welcome to the Ducks on the Pond podcast. This is episode 2. We're here again with Justin and Charlie. Phil will not be here again this week, unfortunately. He did send in something for one of our topics this week, so I will make sure to bring that up. We have Justin here. Justin, what have you been up to?
Not much. I just started this TikTok channel. It's right up here. It's supposed to say Justin Ducks on the Pond podcast, but as my wife pointed out, it does say Justin.pp. So that'll be an easy one for everybody to remember, I'm sure. But other than that, that's about all I've been doing.
Whatever you got to do to generate views.
Right.
Charlie, what do you got going on this week?
Not much at all. Just looking forward to the podcast.
Yep. Well, and Vikings. I know
Vikings
it's
beating up
baseball,
on
Hey,
the
yeah,
Bears.
Vikings.
but you got a lot to look for with the Vikings. So,
Mr. Kirk Thuggins.
so our first topic is a topic chose by Justin this week, and he wants to go over robotic umps and thoughts on the robotic umps that they're using in the minor leagues and how they would affect the major leagues and just thoughts in general. So we'll start off with Charlie on this one.
So I'm not a huge fan of the robo umps just in general. I don't think I think in a lot of ways it takes away from it takes pretty much the entire catcher jobs away. Like framing pitches doesn't really matter anymore. There's robo umps, all that kind of thing. The one thing I find interesting though is the appealing strikes and balls. You can do it once every inning or something like that. I don't remember what the stipulations are. But that's interesting to me because there were a couple calls last year, in the playoffs specifically. There was oh my gosh, that was a really bad call, and that led to runs or whatever. So I think challenging a ball strike pitch, maybe once an inning or once an at bat or something like that would be something to look at.
Yeah, one of the things, if you guys at home aren't familiar, is the way it works is the pitch gets thrown and it's called I believe it's a TrackMan, but it basically wherever the pitch goes, it shows you the location on there. The location gets phoned into the umpire. I'm not sure how that's connected. I would never was able to find out. It basically used the word phone. So it could be in his ear like a Bluetooth, but then he physically calls it. So for those of you who are unsure how it's going to work, is it like a Jetsons where they have just a
Right.
robotic ump? No, it's more of like a little black box or machine.
It's Alice from the Jetsons. She's
Yeah.
behind the plate. Yeah.
Just spinning around the bases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, I'm like Charlie on this one. I am not a fan of robotic umps. One of the reasons is it takes the human element out of the game for me, and I enjoy the human element and the errors in games. They're part of some of baseball's most memorable moments. I think we all remember the Galarraga perfect game. Yes, it was terrible that happened, but it is one of the most memorable moments in baseball history. I still think, in my opinion, he had a perfect game, but we all know it's not in the books. But we got to remember that robotic umps are not perfect. In an article from Odyssey, 7% of pitches were not reported. So whenever it doesn't report a pitch, it just doesn't make a call. If it's a pitch and it doesn't, let's say it glitches or it can't make a determination, it just does not make that call. So I have kind of a problem with that, because then you're reverting back to umps. And if we're going to do it with a certain amount, why aren't they just doing it?
Right.
So that's
why risk it?
Things that bothers me about it. I'm trying to see any last things. Yeah, I mean, you got the challenges on there too. To Charlie's point, from what I read, you get 3. And only the pitcher, catcher, or the hitter are the only ones that can challenge it. So, and you're only allowed 3 if you get it correct. Like if if you end up getting it overturned, you don't lose the challenge. If you do, you lose the challenge, pretty much similar to football. Justin, your thoughts?
Yeah. So I'll save my thought for the end. But yeah, right now it's being used in the minors this year coming up, and it was used last year too. And as long as Angel Hernandez is still allowed to make balls and strike calls, we're probably going to get it in the major leagues here soon. I think within the next 2 years. I did find an interesting quote by Mookie Betts about it. So he's come out and spoke and stated, while we are professionals, so we will adjust to the situation because that's what we're paid to do. But he said for his preference, you're taking the human element out of the game, which is the whole point of it. Yeah, if an error happens with an umpire, that's part of the game itself, and you take advantage of that. That's the whole purpose of the human element. And taking that out, just he said, it just becomes too technical and too analytical, and it's ruining the game for everyone. That was his quote. I got to say, I have to agree with him. You're taking out what makes the game beautiful is those errors and those things that do fire you up, because it does matter. But at the same time, so does that human error. That's the changing point of the game at that point. It's almost like if you take that out, it's like putting MLB The Show on beginner. You know where that ball is going to be every time. So that's just how I feel about it. It's almost like where they took collisions out of home plate. I'm not a big fan of that. I get it at second with the sliding, a lot of legs can be broken, but I think we still need to have that inputted back in to baseball at home plate too. So I think, just ruining that, just taking human element out, is just ruining the game all in general, in my opinion. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about it.
What's it also going to do for the pace of the game? Because if you think
Yeah.
about it, if you have these challenges, if you're successful and you don't use up a challenge, then I mean, what's to stop you from keep doing it? I didn't read about any limitations
Right.
in general other than the three. So what if Charlie's up the bat and he gets one right, and then later in the game he does again. Each time I feel like it's slowing down the game, because I mean, you got to look at it. I'm assuming there has to be a conversation. And I just think if you're trying to quicken up the game, isn't that counterproductive?
Right.
What do you
Yeah, I
think?
think
I did see a clip of it used in the minor league, and it
same.
did seem to go pretty quick. Like it was, the batter took the pitch, tapped his helmet. They showed it on the video board. Actually, like added a little bit of excitement to the game of like, oh, let's look at the board. We can see if it was ball strike. And then they looked, and I think they reversed the call, and then it was over within 15 seconds. So
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
it's
how
a very
much it would
quick
affect. I
process.
could see it affecting a little bit, but like I said, if anything, maybe adds a little excitement to the game.
Yeah.
I was thinking for like people who have like little nuances up at the plate, like Nomar Garcia Parra used to do a bunch of stuff. What if they're like, you can't tap your helmet anymore because we're gonna think you're challenging the call? Because the helmet taps, the gloves, the toe taps, like I remember being in the box and I used to have like a thing where I would just like adjust my, what I mean, helmet when I was after every pitch. Just something like I picked up and was like a habit when I got into the box. So we're all not in favor.
No, not in favor.
Not in
That's what
favor.
it sounds like.
Charlie looks indifferent to me. So
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that like this last year there was a lot of missed calls, and it started to become a big issue, and so I think the league should do something about it. I don't know what the correct answer is to what we're going to do about it, but to do nothing about it seems almost as bad. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think
I think that
I think the league has to do something at some point, because and like you said, some of these umpires that are in games like Angel Hernandez, whenever you see him on the slate to umpire a game, you're like, oh, this is gonna suck. And so it's like that kind of thing. So
I just think
yeah,
if
like
if they're worried about like missing big games like that, I think there needs to be some sort of regulation with how many they're allowed to like completely blow. You know what I mean? Like there has to be some sort of accountability for umpires. I don't think you need to punish the players all that much. I think it just needs to come down to the umpires and how they conduct their own business, because of course it's a whole separate, business at that point for them. They just there's got to be like some sort of accountability for those umpires, and there really isn't any. So
they have an umpire scorecard, but I don't know how they utilize that. I don't know if there's any
yeah,
sort of coaching opportunities or discipline.
right.
Because if that was the case, then how the hell is
Just saying,
Hernandez?
yeah,
I was gonna say, I know that like really those kind of help towards like who's gonna umpire the postseason.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, it doesn't ever seem like, I don't know. There's not like a rotation like there is in the major leagues. Like if in the major leagues you're kind of sucking it up and not playing very well, it's like, all right, we're gonna put you down in the minor leagues for a little bit, let you
You work it
try
out.
to find your rhythm a little bit, because this is the major leagues. If there was some system like that for umpires where okay, we're gonna send you to a different league and you're gonna umpire there and hopefully get your stride back a little bit more.
Mhm.
and then bring it back to the majors or something like that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea either. Having some sort of a call down system. That's not bad.
I also do
If
want
that's how that works.
I do want to stay with those 7% missed calls. It is
That's
analytics.
huge.
I mean, they
Yeah.
will know which ones are missed, and I'm sure they'll recalibrate certain ones because they work off of calibrations. I think that's the correct word I'm looking for. But they will fix it. I'm sure there's going to be software upgrades and stuff like that. So whatever they see wrong is going to get addressed. I mean, that's why they're ironing it out in the minor leagues. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for improvement of the game in the end. If it makes the game better, and I'm all for change. So I
Yeah.
will, I'm still going to watch baseball, and I do have an open mind. So even if I don't
Yeah.
fully agree with it right now, I'm still going to give it a chance. And I think that's how
Yeah.
you think about
I
it.
say, yeah, my big thing a couple years ago, I hated, Rick, I hated the idea of getting rid of the DH and the NL. I hated that idea. Now that I've seen it in action, I'm like, all right, I get it. Once I went to a live game, I was like, okay, I get it now. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I got an open mind to every change. I might not like it at first, but I'll probably like it in the end.
All you got to do away with is just one Bartolo home run. That you're gonna miss every now and then. If you're
All
okay,
right, I can't do this. I can't do this podcast anymore. I'm gonna have to
Bartolo,
leave.
poor Bartolo.
Or like the every once in a while get a Noah Syndergaard game
Yeah,
when he went like 4 for 4,
yeah, four
three
for four.
RBIs, a home run or something like that.
He could hit, man. He could hit.
Yeah, he can definitely hit.
I hate him, but he could hit.
Every now and then you get a moment like Hector Santiago when he played with the White Sox where he forgets he's in the National League and having to bat, and nobody notices that he's not in the on deck circle. And then he literally went down into the clubhouse and they had to get him. And so when he came out, they were playing the Mets, and the fans were booing him mercifully when he came out because he took so long to get out there.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
I get why he didn't.
I know why you get. Let's move on to the second topic. This is Charlie's topic on there, and this is probably going to be a long one, but Charlie's going to go over war.
So my topic is going to be on war, and there are two different types of war, or like the way they measure war is different. And one's Fangraphs war, and one's Baseball Reports war. I'm going to just do Baseball References war today, and then we'll do Fansgraph maybe a different day. But I'm just going to talk about how I think war just doesn't quite measure up how good a player is when you're talking, especially when you measure up some players side by sides. So I'm going to do some side by side players from 2022 and have you guys guess who has the better war. And then I'm going to do some all time war leaders and you guys guess who's got a better war. So I'll start with a couple that I think are pretty close and see if you guys can guess them. So I'll give you guys Pete Alonso versus Jeremy Pena. Who do you think had a better war?
Pena.
I'm going to go Alonso.
Pena had a 4.8 war. Pete Alonso had a 4.4 war.
Knew it.
And then I'll go over their stats. Pete Alonso hit 271 with 40 home runs, 131 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, on base percentage of 352, slugging 518, OPS 869, OPS plus of 164. Jeremy Pena hit 253, 22 home runs, 63 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, on base percentage 289, 426 for slugging, OPS 715, OPS plus 101. So in every single hitting category, Pete Alonso was miles better. However, when you look at defensive war, Jeremy Pena had a 2.4 defensive war. Pete Alonso had a negative 1.1 defensive war. Yep. And so when you look at those two things, and then when you compare their errors, Pete Alonso only had 8 errors this year. Jeremy Pena had 19 errors this year and still had a higher defensive war because how they judge their defensive war is defensive runs saved. And as a first baseman, how many runs are you going to save? Versus shortstop, how many runs are you going to save? So to me, it's just one of those where you can't really compare players using this WAR metric, and it's hard to rank players over other players.
Plus, some of the players get to balls that other ones won't, in my opinion. So your Tim Andersons and your and your Bichettes are going to get to balls that other guys can't get to, and they're going to get credited with errors. So that's why I don't think those errors matter. I mean, they
Right.
matter
Yeah, that's not calculated in there. Yeah.
when calculated. So to Charlie's point, when he's saying 19 errors, I mean, he firsthand saw what Penny can do defensively. So, his
And
19
that's
errors, they're like,
and
okay,
that's and like knowing how WAR is like based off of, because when I did my research, that's how I knew like Pete Alonso wasn't gonna come close, because he's a subpar defensive first baseman. Like, yeah, he's gotten better over the years he's been there, but me watching him, I knew he's gonna blow him out of the water on hits and base, home runs and stuff like that. But his fielding ability is not even close, like at all. So
Right. So I'll do pitchers WAR next. So the two I was comparing, Nestor Cortez versus Framber Valdez. Who do you think's got a better WAR?
it's a Yankees pitcher, right? Cortez.
Nestor Cortez, yeah, the Yankees pitcher.
I'll choose him.
I'll choose Nestor also on that.
Nestor did at 4 point. He had a 4.2 WAR. Framber Valdez had a 3.7 WAR. Nestor Cortez had 158 innings pitched. Framber had 201.
Wow.
Nestor Cortez went 12-4 wins and losses. Framber Valdez went 17-6. ERA Nestor had 2.44. Framber had 2.84. Framber had 194 strikeouts, and Nestor Cortez had 163, and then Cortez had a better whip as well. However, when you looked at the Cy Young votes, Framber finished in 5th and Nestor finished in 8th.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. But yeah, these two I thought were a little bit closer anyway. Like you said, you both guessed Nestor Cortez, so I thought it would be pretty close. But they're saying that Nestor Cortez is a half of a win better than Framber Valdez. So then I'll do Adley Rutschman versus Rafael Devers.
It's got to be Devers.
I say it's got to be Rutschman.
It's got to be Devers.
Rutschman had a 5.2 WAR. Devers had a 4.4.
3 for 3. Let's go.
Adley Rutschman's average 254. Rafael Devers' average 295. Rutschman hit 13 home runs. Devers hit 27. Rutschman had 42 RBIs. Rafael Devers had 88. They had right around the same stolen bases. Rutschman actually had a better on base percentage despite Rafael Devers having that much better of an average. He had a 262 or a 362 average and on base percentage, and Devers had a 358. But going back to defensive WAR, Rutschman had a 1.5 defensive WAR. Devers had a negative 0.3 defensive WAR. And
so how many games? What's the difference in games? Because I believe Rutschman only played a little more than half.
I did not look up games, but I can pull it up real quick.
Because I know he didn't play the full season.
I just think, to kind of fill the space here, I'll just throw out it. I just feel like WAR is just this really overcomplicated stat to justify these big players underperforming. They may be a below average hitter, but they're better in the field. So you're telling me that person's going to be better in the long run than somebody who's going to score me runs versus an okay fielder. And they're going to be better because they're a plus defender, but a minus hitter. And then I got a player that can do both decently. You're going to tell me the other player's better? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I just think it's ridiculous. Because even like that Rutschman and that Devers stat right there, I don't care how many games they played. You could say they played the same amount of games. Devers is a better player. There's no choice. There's no other choice.
At this point.
At this point, because Rutschman's he's still very young, and so is Devers too. At last year, there's no way that Devers was not the better player. There's no way. Just because Rutschman's better in WAR. Are you kidding me? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Rutschman played 113 games. Rafael Devers played 140.
So yes. not as big of a difference as I had.
About a month difference.
So this next one, the person who I thought would have won between them won, but he won by a lot more than I thought he would have won by. So the two I had were Julio Urias from the Dodgers and Alek Manoah from the Blue Jays.
Okay. I'm gonna guess Alec.
Alec.
It was Alec, but it was by a full win, or however they measure it. And then when you look at their stats, they had about the same innings pitched. Arise had a little bit less, about the same record. But Arise had a better record, or a better ERA and better WHIP than Manoah, but finished with a lower WAR.
Weird.
Yeah. So again, one of those, like, they were close, but statistically very close across the board this season. But Manoah finished a full point in front of Arise, which to me, again, like, just shows that the system isn't maybe 100% working as it should. And then this last one, I've already said this one to Rick, and I might have said this one to you, Justin, but Andres Jimenez or Yordan Alvarez, who do you think had a better WAR?
Well, I'm only gonna say Jimenez because we talked about him on the show the other day, and you're like, "How are you not starting him?" I'm gonna choose him.
Yeah, it's
Jimenez had the better WAR despite Yordan blowing him out of the water in just about every offensive category. Again, Andres Jimenez finished with a 2.4 defensive WAR, Alvarez with a negative 0.4. Andres Jimenez had 9 errors on the season. Yordan Alvarez had 1.
Jesus.
It's crazy. I'll even add to that point. Who do you think had the higher WAR last year? Shohei Ohtani or Yordan Alvarez?
I would guess Shohei last year.
Yeah, Ohtani, yeah.
No, not even close.
Really? Nice.
Nope. 3. I'm almost positive that Alvarez has 3. It's almost 3 more wins above average than Shohei. And the point being that I do know that Alvarez plays the field. I do know he plays the outfield. I think he played 56 games. I looked it up, but he had 77 as a DH. And I know Shohei Ohtani I didn't look up how many games he pitched, but I do know he DHs also. But I don't understand and I can't fathom how it would be that big of a difference. Nothing against Alvarez, but he doesn't pitch also.
But Alvarez isn't a two-way player.
Yeah.
So that was one of the statistics that kind of.
I think it's hard to put anything with Ohtani in anything because of the two-way player. Like,
yeah, it is.
I mean, yeah, we've seen it, but like it's been, exponential amount of years since we have. So no one really knows how to stat him because at some point you got to stop giving him MVP just because he's a two-way player. Like he hasn't been in the top 5 in like anything last year. So it's like you got to stop giving him the MVP because no one else is doing it. And it's like, yeah, since no one else is doing it, how are you just going to give it to him if he's got nothing to compare to? But I do love Shohei. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying.
He's a generation. I mean, the last guy to even
exactly. He's a once in a generation. How do you stat that?
And you have to remember that Babe Ruth only did 1 season of both,
exactly.
or 1.5 seasons.
Yep.
Towards the tail end, he did it for a little bit together, but then he went off hitting because he had already dominated pitching. He wanted to start dominating hitting, and boy did he ever. He changed the way we play the game. But let's have a WAR class right now. I need both of you guys. It's my turn to ask a question. Explain to me the calculation for WAR.
I got you. I got it written down.
What a cheat.
Yeah, I did.
But I want you to explain what it means as you do it.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that. I'm going to say, because there are some. So I'll read this part. This is what I found, and then you guys can help me understand what the heck it means. So I know what an RBI is. So RBI plus fielding runs above average, plus positional adjustment, plus league adjustment, plus base running runs, and then whatever the defensive stat is what I was able to find.
So this is what I brought up with sabermetrics and analytics. They're great. I think they're great. They can really dive in and give you stuff that the naked eye wouldn't see in a game. But even the most hardcore baseball fans can't really tell you what any of those things mean. I mean, they may be able to dig into it, but truly when you're taking that and plussing, minusing, dividing, I'm telling you, nobody has like a really true understanding on there. And that metric, like you said, even just talking about it makes your head spin. It is not a great indicator. And to Charlie's point, defense is so heavily weighed in there that it affects. You cannot tell me on some of these some of these examples that they're better players, even last season, and you can't use WAR by itself. You
Yeah.
can't. You can use it in a conversation debating on who's better, but in the end, it can't be your just sole argument. It's not
Yeah.
a good gauge of players, because one of the thing is there's just no standard WAR like other statistics. You have 300 is a great hitter. Tell me what's a good for WAR. Like what's a good,
Yeah.
like what are you looking for per season? There is no standard WAR. It's just with these analytics, they're just an algorithm to get a desired result. And I know I've said that before, but it's true. And I don't think that we should completely ignore other statistics like these. You have a lot of people nowadays, and this is going to upset some people. They want to use just the new analytics. You cannot take out the old analytics. They're still just as important. Some of them even use some of the old analytics in the formula for it. So you can't take them out. When you're gauging MVP, I don't care what their record was for the team in the season. It's the most valuable player. I don't want you to tell me in WAR, one guy. So let's say you have a crappy replacement. You know what I mean? It's very possible you could have a higher WAR because you don't have a great backup. You know what I mean? And it also can depend, to Charlie's point, on the position. Those are things that I don't think should matter. It should be based off of numbers, and you can use those new analytics. But I think that you also have to still use the older analytics, the on base percentage, the OPS plus, the total bases, the on base percentage, hits, runs. I still think those need to be factored in when determining the most valuable player. Like I said, a lot to Charlie's points that
Yeah.
he brought up, especially with those questions. What do you think, Justin? I know you went over some of your stuff.
Yeah, I just think WAR is a useless stat. I just don't see it as any kind of advantage over another player. Like what I want to see, if I'm looking at a hitter, like to your point, I want to see what their on base percentage was for the 6 years they've been in the majors. I want to see their home run totals. I want to see that average total, especially if I'm doing a power hitter. I want to see that average versus that home run total. That's what I want. I don't care if he's an okay fielder or like that's not the case here. Like I'm hiring a bat. I don't care what their WAR is. Same thing for like if I'm hiring somebody for their position play, I want them for the defense. Like the Mets did with McCann. We hired him for his defense. We knew he wasn't going to hit. Let's be honest, Brian. We knew that wasn't going to happen.
For a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like
it was nothing to bat an eye about.
Exactly. Like he was, we hired him for his position play, and a lot of, New York being New York, they forget that, and then they want to look at WAR. What's his WAR? It's like, come on, guys, like just get out of the WAR scenario. It doesn't make any sense.
Do you
But
know
that's just how I
the
feel.
highest WAR, highest ever WAR? And you guys,
I have no idea.
It is Babe Ruth. Do you know who's number 2?
Oh, who is it? I saw it the other day. And
Mantle. I don't know.
No, it is not Mantle. Do you know who?
I thought it was Ted Williams, but I don't know if that's right.
Newer player, older player.
Thinking way too hard. It's very controversial. Number 2.
Oh, Bonds.
Oh, Bonds, obviously.
Barry Bonds, and then number 3 is one of my favorite players. One of the what I consider one of the greatest of all time, 5-tool players. It is Willie Mays at number 3.
Oh yeah, okay.
Mays, to me, is number 1 in WAR if he doesn't miss time. So
yeah.
But that would be my next point. Is Jay Charlie? This one's for you. Who had the highest WAR in 2017?
2017. That was Altuve's MVP year. I don't know if he was the WAR leader or not.
I believe I'll have to double check, but
I'm going to say Judge because that's who he stole it from.
Yeah, I was going to say I think both of the top 2.
I'm just messing with you, Charlie. Don't kill me.
But that's what I'm saying. My point would be just in general, despite the answer, which I can look up.
And one thing I will say is it doesn't seem like the MLB too heavily focuses on WAR when they look at most of their awards.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in the American League, Dylan Cease had a better WAR than Justin Verlander, but they gave Verlander the Cy Young, and stuff like that. And like we said, like in the MVP voting, I think Jordan was 3rd in the American League, 3rd or 4th in the American League, and Jimenez I don't think was even top 10.
Mm-hmm.
So to the whatever MLB and now whoever gives those awards out, to their credit, they aren't exactly
Good.
focusing on WAR either.
That's good.
Sometimes they do. If it's a really close,
Yeah, I think if it's really
Sometimes.
close, they have to. Which
um,
that's fine. That's fine. If it comes down to it, you've looked at every other stat. The only other stat there is war. That's 100% fine with me. You know what I mean? Like,
if you're using
but
it as like by itself, it doesn't make sense.
yeah, it does. It has no leg to stand on in an argument. Like, it's got nothing.
And to go back to your thing on Shohei Ohtani, I don't think it should generate him votes because he can do both. It's impressive,
Right.
but
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
you should just gauge it based on that. But I don't want to put aside the fact that what he is doing is we should be glad that we are getting to witness this, because this does not happen often.
Absolutely.
You can have guys that are comparable who can do different things. I've seen guys play 9 different positions in the field, and there is certain anomalies. But for somebody to be that good at pitching and to be that good at hitting and getting a chance to see it, the baseball, in case he goes to the National League, which nobody knows where he's going to go and what happens after this year or during this year if he gets traded. But I'm sure glad there's a DH everywhere. I don't know if you guys agree with
Right.
that, because that might have impacted where he went. But the fact that
I
we
mean,
have universal DH, we know he can go anywhere at this point.
I think that's what that was kind of used for as well, as a launching point for those types of players. I think we're gonna. I hope we start to see that again. Come through pretty regularly. As kids, that's all we saw. As kids can pitch, catch, hit, everything. And I think for a long time it was. Now, don't get me wrong when I say this, because it's not easy, okay? But it was easier to focus on one position rather than to try to be best at both. And I think we're going to start to see that now, because a lot of college kids are coming up and they're doing the two-way. We'll see how it pans out, but hopefully we see more, but probably not.
Well, I think part of the problem is like, well, yes, that universal DH does help somebody like Shohei Ohtani keep in there. What you're gonna see is like players in college and in the minors who are like, oh, I'm a pitcher, but when I get to the majors, I'm never gonna have to hit, even if I'm in the National League. Why would I focus on hitting? And so I think that will be a little bit of a turnoff for a lot of people. And like, well, I'm never actually going to have to hit. So why would I focus on it? And so I could see that potentially, that the universal DH potentially squashing that a little bit.
Yeah, because there's
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
But the other side of that coin is that they'll focus all but nothing on pitching, which could improve a lot of guys who are maybe on that cusp, but they put some time into hitting. You could use that time that you would use for hitting to put more into your pitching. So
Yeah, I just don't think
a lot of time, but
I just don't think it'll result in more two-way players. If anything,
I
I
hope
think it'll
so.
result in less two-way players.
yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know if it'll result in less, because then you'll have those players that want to come out. I mean, you look at it now. Shohei Ohtani is probably the biggest name in baseball. Is the biggest name in baseball right now. Imagine all the kids he's inspiring to come up and be two-way players.
It is.
You got to think about the future. It's not just these guys that are in college right now. It's all these kids that are going to come up in the next 20 years that have always played two-way players that want to be that Shohei Ohtani. I think we'll see it. We'll see it more, but not right away. I think it'll be more towards 20 years later. Yeah.
I think at some point those kids will realize like my best shot at getting
exactly
is going to be choosing hitting or pitching, and especially with that universal DH, there's going to come a point where they're like, you know what, I'm just going to become a pitcher, or I'm just going to become a hitter, because it's it's a tough path, and if you're working from the minor leagues, we've seen some people who have been really good at both, that come into the National League, somebody like we're talking about, like a Noah Syndergaard or somebody like that. But I just don't think with the universal DH, I just don't see a whole lot of people trying to come up as a two-way player.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we move on to my topic, a couple things. First one, I want a quick answer from you guys. Does Shohei Ohtani, if I could talk, Shohei Ohtani, does he win the MVP next year? Yes or no?
If no one has
that in mind, so
if no one has a season how Judge did, yes, he takes it. Now, whether that be in the National League or the American League, we don't know yet. I think there's I think it's a harder chance for him in the National League to get MVP than the American League. That's just me spitballing and showing favoritism to the National League. But I think he gets it regardless, unless somebody has a record-breaking year like Judge had. I don't see anybody else getting it. My opinion.
Charlie?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of season he has. Because if he has another season where he's, maybe slightly above average to average at the plate, and slightly above average to average, pitching again, it's like, well, do we give it to a player who's just slightly above average at what he does? What happens if, again, somebody else, maybe not a historic season like Judge, but what if, somebody else puts up some really big numbers, maybe like a Goldschmidt type from last year, where
Yeah.
they're close to a triple crown, and then they're very clearly the best player, the best hitter in the league, in the National League. Like, well, do you give it to the guy who's clearly the best hitter in the league, or do you give it to the guy who's a little above average at both hitting and pitching?
So my
Yeah.
second would be, I did some looking up, and would you consider Alvarez having an MVP season last season?
Last season or this season?
So 2022.
I mean, I think part of the problem is he was injured a little bit too much and didn't get I think, he missed, I think 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Or if he has those weeks, he maybe puts up, 10 more home runs and, 30 more RBIs, and then maybe he gets the MVP, but just based on the season he had alone, probably not.
But you'd say he's above average, like a lot, correct? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think was top 3 hitters in the American League last year.
so when you bring up Otani and compare when you say he's slightly above average, I'm going to pull up the stats here, just to. So I mean, there's obviously Shohei played more games, so he played 22 more games. Yordan Alvarez had 5 more runs, but Otani had 16 more hits, 1 more double, 4 more triples. Alvarez had 3 more home runs, 2 more RBIs, but Shohei had 10 more steals. Walks were very similar. Strikeouts, Shohei had a lot more. Average, Alvarez had more, including on base percentage and slugging percentage. Total bases was Shohei Otani. So very comparable. I mean, obviously, unless
Say they're real.
did more damage, but they definitely have comparable numbers.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they were comparable with Alvarez playing 20 less games. Throw 20 more games in there for Alvarez, it's a different story. And that was my point. Is like I don't think it was an MVP year for him last year because of the missing those 20 games, or however many missed.
And my point just is that Shohei did have a pretty good season last year. It's, I think people hold him that they want top and both. Like they're expecting now he had that really good year. They want top and both. Like it has to be anything above that. They're just considering him average, and that's the other point to that. You either have people who are like, what he's doing is otherworldly. And then you have your people who are like, if he's not excelling at both, to Charlie's point, if he's not top in both, then what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, you can't call him the best in baseball if he's not the best in baseball. And if you're not top number, you're just number 2 at that point. So how are we going to be like, this guy's the best player in baseball if he's not top all the time? That's my opinion. It's like, if you're not top, you're not the best. That's that simple to me.
All right, who's ready for my fun topic?
Well, since I had to watch the movie again last night, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Okay, my topic's going to be a little out of left field. I want these guys to take the cast of Major League, which is one of my favorite baseball movies. Actually, it is my favorite baseball movie. And I want them to use either historical or active players. And I want them to either use their playing style or personality and basically come up with a player for each cast member in there, which will be a lot of fun. And I will be going over Phil's. So once Justin starts on this one, and then we go to Charlie, I will do mine. And then since Phil couldn't make it, he sent me a list prior. So I will go over Phil's. I don't have reasons why he chose them. I will actually probably ask these guys why they think he chose who he did, which will make it more fun. And then we'll close it out with some last, maybe some quick topics, and then we'll be good. So we'll start with Justin on this one.
Yeah. So I had to rewatch the movie last night because I haven't seen it in years. So it was a lot of fun. I forgot how great it was. So let's just jump in. So for Vaughn, Mr. Charlie Sheen himself, I have as Matt Harvey. You know, for the reason why the famous nosebleed game, the not showing up for practices, the hanging out with the models, the hanging out, and then just being absolutely dominant when he's in there. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, in the beginning of the movie, he didn't have his rhythm, which is kind of like Harvey, and then all of a sudden he straightened up a little bit, and then he's just got it. You know what I mean? So that's where I went with him. And then Willie Mays Hayes, Mr. Wesley Snipes himself. I did Mr. Smiles, Lindor. It just seems like they have that same kind of attitude. Maybe not so much the same position, but they're very happy all the time and ready to do stuff for the team and contribute any way they can, which was nice. Jake, which was the catcher, I have as Yadier Molina. Just for the fact that he's that glue that held that team together. He showed them what was important and what winning looked like and how to conduct themselves on and off the field. I thought that was really interesting. Harris, uh, if you've watched the movie and the first time you meet him, he starts claiming he's got Vaseline all over his body. He's got some stuff behind his ear. He wipes snots on the ball. I'm going to go with Cole on that one, for Mr. Garrett Cole from the last couple of years of the sticky stuff situation. And I just feel like Cole in the clubhouse is very close to how Harris acts, which you should watch the movie because that's how I feel Cole is. Roger, the big shot, I call Mr. Carrera. Just that high dollar guy that comes in, and yeah, he might be great, but he's kind of an ass. I feel like that's how that's going to turn out. Sorry for the language on YouTube, but that's how it is. And then I did the coach Lou as Buck Showalter. They seem to have that same kind of grit about them. They're very blunt, very honest, and they just seem like they're really nice people to be around at the same time. And then my favorite one, I did cast Rachel, which is the owner of the Cleveland Indians, and that's part in the movie. I'm gonna say whoever the hell owns Boston, that's who she is. Because what are they doing? Nobody knows. If they're trying to relocate the team, they're trying to sell it. What's going on? So I feel like that. And then I have Mr. Pedro. I did not cast Mr. Pedro because it made me uncomfortable to cast him with all the stuff that he goes and dies and sacrifices chickens and stuff. I didn't have anyone that came off head for that one, but I just kind of chose personalities rather than play style or anything like that. So I just went with that one.
It's a good set.
Yeah.
Set. What about you, Charlie?
A couple of the ones you had, I also had.
Nice.
But I'll go over a couple different ones that I had. I had Willie Mays Hayes as Willie Mays.
Fair enough.
And I thought that that's kind of what they were going for in the first place. So that's what I went with. Similar speedy center fielders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I went with. For Wild Thing, I didn't really have a great answer. I thought your answer was pretty good, but I just went with Randy Johnson just because.
That's a good one. I was playing with him too. Yeah.
Yep.
Just has that killer fastball, but also is a little a little wild maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the catcher is that. I'm trying to remember who the catcher was.
Jake Taylor.
Pardon?
Jake Taylor was his
name. That's right.
Taylor.
Yeah, Jake Taylor. I had Maldonado.
Ooh, good one. Okay.
Just everywhere he goes, he's the same. It's kind of similar to Yachty, but he's that guy that keeps the squad together. If you watch the Astros this year at all, Maldonado was the glue that held that team together and got them to the World Series. So, but I think like every other one of mine pretty well matched up with yours.
Nice.
Which ones did you have that Justin had?
I had Garrett Cole, the same thing.
Nice.
I remember. The coach I had different, but I didn't actually do the coach, so I didn't. I
just did it.
I was trying to think of one, but I couldn't think of anything for the coach. Shoot, who else was on there?
There's Roger, the third baseman.
Oh, I think I put Alex Rodriguez down as him, but
Okay,
Maybe I
that's a
don't
good one.
remember.
I
Are
like
you
that
doing
one more
like
than mine. That's a good
prima
one.
donna?
Yeah,
He was good defensively, but you could see him being like, I don't want to hurt my pretty face.
Or he's
yeah,
like, no,
exactly.
you're kind of yeah. I could see that. Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think
Good
about
one,
that. I was
Charlie.
trying to do today's players, but no, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. All right, we ready for mine? Mine will be a handful. I picked a couple,
Okay,
so you guys.
let's hear Phil's first. I want Phil's
Oh,
first.
you want Phil's
I
first? Give me
want Phil's first.
one.
Then we'll get to yours because yours is going to be the most accurate.
That's what I figured. Let's see here. So Phil sent me a text message this morning. He has Jake Taylor as Gary Carter, which if I had to
Okay.
speculate, it's a guy who's been around. He can contribute.
Mhm.
He's on pretty good teams. Montreal, I know, didn't do all that well. The Mets teams, he was great on,
Yep.
winning a World Series with them. Roger Dorney has a Steve Garvey. I thought that was pretty good. Squeaky clean image, I would assume that's why he chose him. I'm sure he might tell us otherwise. Eddie Harris, he has Charlie Huff, which I thought was pretty interesting. I mean, you have an older guy, so I guess maybe he's comparing it because he did. I assume he had a long career in that movie. I don't know if they ever bring up like if he was a journeyman, but Huff played into his mid-40s, I would believe. He was a knuckleballer. Pedro Serrano, he has Pedro Guerrero, slugger from the '80s. So I'm guessing big power hitters. So that was the comparison there. Willie Mays Hayes, he has his Ricky Henderson.
Oh, it's a good one. I like that one too.
Henderson was very full of himself, using his name to reference himself. He's like, Ricky can do this, Ricky can do that. So that very much fits to Willie Mays Hayes. Ricky Vaughn, he has Mitch Williams, who was nicknamed the Wild Thing, most famous. People remember him for giving up that game-winning World Series home run to Joe Carter. And then Lou Brown, he has his Don Zimmer, old Cubs manager in the late '80s, and most known for being thrown down to the ground by Pedro Martinez.
Good.
The old
Guess what
brawl.
he get? He catching the hands.
Thoughts and feelings on Phil's choices.
They're good. They're
Yeah.
a little bit
Dated.
more old school, but they're
Yeah, a
good.
little bit dated, but no, they're solid. Absolutely.
With being dated.
Nothing's wrong with being dated. It's just some of them I didn't know they were.
I'm the oldest one in here, and so is Phil.
That's true. You are 86.
That's all right. Pedro Serrano, I had Cecil Fielder. Reason I picked Cecil Fielder is you have a guy who could mash. If you've never seen Cecil Fielder, go watch him. I mean, he hit some home runs that went close to being out of stadiums. I mean, this guy could mash, and he just had that gentle giant personality, which Serrano has in the movie. And another really good comparison, which is funny that you bring this up, Justin. When you brought up sacrificing chickens,
Yeah.
my other one was Wade Boggs, who was super superstitious during the game, who he would etch stuff in the batter's box and he would eat chicken and take only a certain amount of cuts in the batter's box or ground balls in the field. And Pedro Serrano is super superstitious in the movie. So he's very about superstition. So that was my comparison there. Dorn, I have as Tomei. Here's why. So Jim Tomei started his career at third base, where Dorn plays, and was not very good in the field at third base. I love Tomei to death, but I just got done watching the Cleveland Indians documentary about their '90s team, and he was not great at third base, eventually moving to first base. Now, if you've ever watched that movie, Dorn can't even get a ground ball. Like, he just keeps booting them in the beginning. So that's why I compared that one to Tomei. When you were looking at Jake Taylor, I did Joe Mauer. Charlie, I like this one.
That's
a good
solid
one.
choice.
That's a good one too. Yeah, I like that.
2004 to 2010, he had a lot of injuries, which Jake in the movie has really bad knees. And I know he didn't have, like Mauer didn't have any like crazy bad knees, but they eventually moved him to first base because of his leadership. And Jake Taylor has great leadership in that movie. Again, you guys brought it up. He's the glue that holds that team together, which that's how I felt with Mauer with those Twins teams.
Yeah.
He was the field general. Willie Mays, I've got a bunch. I've got Ricky Henderson, I've got Kenny Lofton, or Bo Jackson. We obviously know why Ricky Henderson and Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson's a really good one.
Yeah, they're really like self-promoters of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why. I mean, generally, I want to say that character was pretty much a mix between Willie Mays and Ricky Henderson. You know, the personality of Ricky Henderson, but obviously was named after Willie Mays, which was a great point. Ricky Vaughn, I've got two. I've got Mitch, the obvious answer, which is Mitch Williams, because nicknamed the Wild Thing. Again, if you haven't seen him pitch, it's crazy. I mean, he would pitch so hard he would fall off the mound. And I know Justin, you do a lot of new stuff. Charlie, I know you're kind of a mixed bag with older stuff and newer baseball. But if you haven't seen Mitch Williams, go watch him. I mean, his windup was ridiculous. You wonder how he got the ball over the plate half the time. The other one was Rick Ankiel, and I think you guys know why I chose Rick Ankiel. He
Yeah.
could not throw a strike. Poor guy. He could throw a bomb from center field and get a guy going to third base from the wall, but he could not throw a strike. So that's why in the beginning, if you haven't seen it, Ricky Vaughn's knocking the heads off of like cardboard cutouts. So
that was Rick Ankiel right there.
Eddie Harris is Gaylord Perry or Phil Necro, for the simple thing that those guys were both known to use emery boards, Vaseline, snot, anything they could to get it to doctor the ball. They also pitched well, probably into their 40s, if I had to guess. I don't know for sure, but they were both journeymen who had very long careers. And the last one that I did was, who am I missing here? Oh, Lou Brown. I did either Lou Piniella or Bobby Cox.
Oh, Bobby Cox is just such a good one, dude. That's so good.
Because Bobby Cox would get ejected. And if you remember, Lou has a temper in that movie. So Bobby Cox would be quiet, kind of how Lou was in the movie, but he would literally jump out of the dugout and get ejected if he's
got the most ejections, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And Piniella was just a hothead. So if you remember, I can't remember if it's the first or second. I want to believe it's the second movie. He actually goes to the hospital because of like his heart, because he gets so worked up. And Piniella, I felt like there was a couple times watching Lou Piniella get ejected where I'm like, how is this guy not having a stroke on the field? Like he was popping blood vessels in his head, screaming. So what do we think?
About what?
I mean, about what? We just got done. How are you feeling about my picks now?
Oh, your picks are great. They're perfect.
Those are really good picks.
Yeah, they'd be the better ones.
No, I think everyone's picks were good as long as you got the reasoning for it. I mean, obviously, if you're like, I just picked this random guy because whatever, you guys had really good reasons to back him up. Like I said, I can't speak for Phil other than because he didn't give me reasons. He just gave me the guys that he chose.
Gotcha.
I think we'll close it up. One of the last things I wanted to bring up is something I saw on TikTok. So probably every week I will probably throw out something I've seen on TikTok just to get your guys' thoughts. So surprise. We had a discussion on my TikTok that Ben Verlander put out, and I put out a video. And I just want your guys' thoughts before we close it up. If you're a baseball player, what do you feel like you would rather do? Hit a home run or rob a home run? We'll start with Charlie. I'll give you some time too, because it's these guys they know the topics prior, so they have a chance to do some research. This one they did not.
Well, it depends on the situation. If we're talking like game-winning home run robbery, I'll take that. But if we're talking just like I don't think anything will ever beat a walk-off home run. I mean that's got to be the best feeling in all of baseball. So I think I would take home run probably 9 times out of 10. Like I said, depending on the situation.
Okay, Justin.
I would rather, in my opinion, I'd rather rob the home run. Because that's game winning. To Charlie's point, walk off is arguably the best. I think that's the best visual. But I think as a player, I think robbing the game winning or the tying home run, I think, because I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because like I've hit a home run before, but I was a child, like I was a kid. It's a little bit different. But I've never robbed a home run. I haven't had that feeling. So I would say robbing a home run.
So some of the comments in the chat. First of all, I chose hitting a home run, and I went to Charlie's point. There's nothing. The way I heard Scott Pasednik talk about his game-winning home run in the World Series, the walk-off from Game 2, which most people forget. He had no home runs in the regular season. He had 2 in the postseason, including 1 in the World Series. He said when he hit that home run at Guaranteed Rate Field or the Cell, whatever. The names change so often now. What happened was he said he never felt his feet touch the ground.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot.
He felt like he was walking on air the entire time because of adrenaline. And the 3 videos I showed when I gave my answer was Joe Carter's walk-off home run, which we just talked about. I did the Kirk Gibson home run, which made me become a fan of baseball in the 1988 World Series. And I can't believe what I just saw. And then the last one was Bill Mazeroski's walk-off home run against the Yankees. If you didn't get a chance to see that one, he's so elated. He's like swinging his helmet as he's like rounding the bases. And the Pirates were never supposed to beat the Yankees that year. It was Game 7. So those 3, and some of the comments, like I said, I have a person saying, don't forget David Freese's home run in the 2011 World Series. There was 2 big ones in that game. But a couple people brought up your point, Justin. They basically said if you've robbed a home run, the feeling is crazy, because a home run, if you hit them all the time, they become less.
It becomes numb. It becomes numb.
Whereas home run robberies don't happen very often. Even Adam Engel, who's one of the best at it, only has a handful of them.
I'm gonna say, look at last year's Brandon Nimmo's robbery. What that did for that game is incredible. Like the complete atmosphere of everything changed when that happened. Now, yes, to your point,
He's
yes.
got this devilish look.
I look at Yordan Alvarez walk off against the Mariners.
No, that's what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say.
Or the Mariners, Mitch Haniger walk off to send him to the playoffs.
No, 100%. I'm not saying that that's not a great feeling. It's just, I think in my own thing, I think a robbery is better for me to witness than an actual home run. Because I see it all the time. Like Rick's point, I see that all the time. Like, yeah, I see a bomb. Cool. Like, that's cool. It's like the Schwarber shot in Philly over, I think it was the World Series where you hit that thing like 500 feet. That was great to see, But like, I've seen it. I don't see too many home run robberies. And if that ever happens in a postseason, I think that's equivalent to hitting a walk-off. If that were to happen, I think it really just depends on the situation. But my personal opinion, I would rather see a robbery in a game-saving robbery home run than hitting a walk-off, in my opinion.
It depends on the situation.
Exactly. It all depends on the situation.
Walk-off, 100% it's hitting a home run. 100% for me. But that guy in the messages on TikTok did bring up a great point. If you're just talking about standard robbery, not even end a game, to just a regular home run, the robbery's probably going to take it if you think about it. Just a standard home run. So if you're
it doesn't have to be a walk-off.
37
standard home run, yeah.
Do you think home run number 12 really makes a difference unless it is a walk-off? Or what if he robs a home run? He doesn't do that often. So him as a baseball player may value that robbery. But if we're talking walk-offs, 100%, it is the home run, Charlie, like you said, without question. So
yeah, as somebody who lived in Minnesota for a long time, the home run that they always would show is that Kirby Puckett walk-off home run.
Yep.
To win the World Series.
Yep. My favorite home run robberies, I got a couple of them real quick before we go. Endy Chavez, Mets.
It's a good one.
Oh, man, I thought that ball was going over. He, like, snow-coned it.
Yeah, I don't know how he held on to it.
I think Roland hit it. I think Roland
get it, and he just somehow was able to grab that. I don't understand it.
If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It is Kenny Lofton. And it's called I think it gets referenced as the Spider-Man catch. Because
is that the Barry Bonds one where they ran out in the field and like hugged each other?
No,
or is that the All-Star game one? That was a good one.
I was going to say the Torrey Hunter one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Torrey Hunter.
Surhoff, and he hits one, and Kenny Lofton has to run to the wall, climb it. He's not super tall, and he almost has his back to it as he goes up, and he goes over the fence with his glove. I mean,
that's insane.
That was in Cleveland, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
That's crazy.
All right. Any closing stuff from you guys before we go? It'll be the same time next week. Give us a couple weeks, or maybe next week we may go live, just depending on what's going on. If not, you'll be able to check us out, Ducks on the Pond podcast on YouTube. Justin, any final words?
No final words. Just I guess there is. Just follow me on TikTok if you want to see random lists.
Like it. Charlie?
No, I don't get anything.
God, you guys are always men of few words.
Well, our comments are turned on now, so our viewers should give us some topics.
I do talk.
There you go.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe and like, and we'll see you guys next week.